I'd like to hear like if an elevator broke down and you and I were stuck in it for 3 minutes and you only had a couple minutes to explain the Rhode Island thing to me in the most simplest of terms. How would you do that?
All right. It the There's an enormous amount of fact behind everything I say, but it's not going into the 3 minutes. Basically, Rhode Island unions drive all Rhode Island labor law bills.
Okay.
They write them elsewhere. They give them to the legislators, and the legislators do what they're told, which is submit them, defend them, and then pass them.
Wait, what do you mean? What do you mean they write them elsewhere?
The unions do the writing.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, yes.
In other words, Representative Steve Johnson doesn't write them. He gets one from somebody in the union that he knows well, and they say, here's your bill, submit it. And so they're just functionaries of the union who are also paid to be legislators. So there's a huge conflict of interest, but we're not talking conflict of interest at the moment. So the unions tried 3 different bills this year, and they won 2 of them, and they're horrible. The one that didn't pass was inserting the ABC test in all Rhode Island state labor laws. So we all know what that would have led to.
Would it have been the ABC test or this new 6-prong one?
No, it would have been the ABC test. The chatter in the legislature was, we want it just like Massachusetts has it. And that was the California one, and that was the PRO Act one. So, okay, so that failed, and I am in the act this week of finding out why it failed, but we can guess between us.
Yeah.
The second thing is that they voted on and passed, and the governor signed what we'll call a felony misclassification bill. Now, these 2 bills are just terrifying, but they're terrifying to different audiences.
Right. I saw the one that said, what, 1,500 to 5,000 with imprisonment potential.
Yep. And 3 years. Now, one tip, they had 6 different things they did. I'll only go into one. The unit of crime is the buyer's standard payroll period. So if you were to do a marketing, contract for marketing work as a buyer, in other words, you're a little company and you want some market research on whatever, the period in which you could commit a felony is the pay period. And every time your payroll clicks over, you enter a new penalty period. So if you did a 3-month project, which for marketing and software and a lot of other things, even physical therapy, that's a new felony. So you just think about everything we say. That could be, in a 3-month period, that could be 7 felonies, at 3 years each and 5,000 each. So this terrifies, absolutely intimidates clients. And
it should terrify the employers. Yes,
right? Because, it's going to get worse for everybody. So that's the second bill. That's now state law. And this thing came in the night. There's a reason for this when I'm done with my 3-minute speech. Anyway, so that intimidates the clients. Never buy. Can you imagine some woman who's got a marketing firm, and if she's accused of this, she could have she could have 30 felonies if she's got a couple of staffers on her. She's got kids at home. She's working part-time. She's employing part-time people. She's just felonies all over the place. Every advisor will say, don't do it. Don't do it. And she's basically out of business. All right. The third horror, also, this is in law, is this attempt to intimidate independent contractors and drivers and moms and the disabled. Again, you have to file a form per year per client. and you have to identify yourself in great detail. Even though all the data the state needs to identify you and your clients, they already have through the 1099 NEC, not elsewhere classified,
Right.
and 1099 miscellaneous. It's a completely redundant effort. It also asks for your age, which they don't need to know. And they don't need to know your name and address on a publicly, public information form. It's just not right.
I was going to say, I thought there was a law against this, that you can't have people, because of intimidation, you can't have people's information out there.
Well, the state of Rhode Island apparently hasn't read that law, although that's my recollection very clearly too. So we'll get to this. There's so much other badness. Anyway, those are the three horrors. And two of them are in law, and they're perfectly capable now of driving everyone out of independent contracting, buying or selling in Rhode Island.
Yeah, see, I can't remember again who it was, but it was a gig worker, and somebody was saying, because they brought it up to me, which I thought was interesting, because I had already read your piece, I had already looked at a couple other things, and I was like, whoa. And then they brought it up to me, and they're like, yeah, but that would never affect me because I'm the worker. I'm like, but if the employer is afraid to give you work, there's no work.
Right. That's the whole thing with the way the Fair Labor Standards Act set this up in 1938, is they keep you out of court by preventing the buyer. The buyer's not going to go to court to get his, to be able to buy services from you. That won't happen. Mm-hmm. So, but the thing is, I think this is I think it's a major drafting mistake. I think they forgot, Steve, that the original purpose of the writing the Fair Labor Standards Act the way they did was to keep the independent contractor out of court, because they make very sympathetic witnesses in court. They're women, they're people with a profession that people admire, like doctors or scientists. They are trying to just get ahead and pay their bills and do all the things that everybody on the jury wants to do too. And so the unions did not want them in court, and they have their people in the plaintiff's attorney telling, don't let these people into court. They're going to win every time. But this time they made a mistake by a specific requirement of the that fill out these forms and get intimidated and violate your own privacy. So I think they're going to have litigation about this, and I think they're going to wind up either having the bill taken back or they'll lose in court, or something will happen, or they'll pull it because the damage is coming and they don't want to lose a court case and get a precedent. So I did finishing up my 3 minutes, I did a little research online this morning, thinking of this. And because these bills, plural, proceeded through the House and the Senate in Rhode Island with just zero info. It was like a black box. Nothing came out of it. And we looked at the biggest 100 employers in Rhode Island, and if you do this, anybody can do it. You're going to get a list of the total employment of each of those companies. So CBS is at the top of the list. Rhode Island is a very small state with a very small economy, with very few large employers and very few large industries.
So that was a question I was going to, is that, I mean, I felt like it was a stupid question, but is that why Rhode Island? Are they doing it because, this has the least amount of people? Let's try it here. Yes.
And it's the one they control the most, I think. Like even Massachusetts has my understanding is that Massachusetts, it hasn't gotten worse here because Massachusetts actually depends on the independent contracting income that the state earns from giant independent contracting using businesses like defense, medical research, universities, pharmaceuticals, those are big businesses, and they need expertise all the time. So the Massachusetts takes very good care of its industry, and Rhode Island, not so much. Anyway, long story short, we went through, we took the normal participation rate in independent contracting for the national level, which is 63 million people and out of 158 million workers, or 40%. And we applied it to Rhode Island's workforce of 569,000 people. And it turns out that self-employment is bigger than all the independent contracting. Let me get this right. Then all the, it's 40% as big as the total corporate employment of all the big 100 firms. And when you start going down the list, you realize, most of these people are operating outside the state, and their numbers don't show up. They're much smaller than this stupid list that I can't use for this purpose. So basically, when it comes right down to it, whatever number you use for the percentage rate independent contracting in Rhode Island, it's the biggest employer in the state. And Rhode Island just torpedoed it.
Okay.
And I don't think they know that yet. I don't think that fact has come to anybody's mind. I don't think the unions would want to catch that fish. I don't think the legislators can survive having done that. What are they going to do with 150,000 people out of work in Rhode Island? I mean, they're either going to move, Steve, or they're going to, worst to the state is they're going to just ignore the law, go catch me. And you can't, they have a diehard anti-business individual who runs the Department of Revenue. He's going to try to get somebody's, and get their goose, and there's just going to be hell to pay. And not only that, national freelancers, if they tackled this as a team, tackled Rhode Island and made a case out of the different people who published the bill and passed the bill, and pushed back on them from their national, protected nationally position.
Sure.
Rhode Island couldn't withstand it. There isn't any other place to work in Rhode Island. So then you've lost either the individual moves out, or they just go to Connecticut or Massachusetts for work. How successful was that? So this is
how smart is that too? Because aren't Connecticut and Massachusetts also on the chopping block?
Well,
you're just temporarily moving across the border to wait to move again.
Well, yes, Connecticut has its problems, and so does Massachusetts. But if you got two kids,
sure,
and you either want to work part-time to help out your hubby or something like that, or the two of you are independent contracting, which we see a lot, what do? You have to buy the kids food this week.